This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
This episode is brought to you by Honda. Introducing the all-new, all-terrain Honda Passport Trail Sport, the most off-road capable Honda Passport Honda has ever dreamt up. The Passport features increased ground clearance, roof rails on all trims, and available specially developed all-terrain tires. And you'll stay comfortable with tri-zone climate control and available features like heated and ventilated front seats and a panoramic moonroof. Learn more at honda.com/passport.
Shopping is hard, right? But there's a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And she sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what I love and send back the rest. It's so easy. Personal styling for everyone. Get started today at stitchfix.com/Spotify. That's stitchfix.com/Spotify.
It's really cool.
Bonjour, hello, and welcome to the Rosbif Rugby podcast, your one-stop shop for all things French rugby. Bit of top 14, Pro de Nationale, French national team, the European Cups, the Champions Cup, Challenge Cup, of course, the town cities, bars, restaurants, food, cuisine, wine, fans, everything that makes the French rugby experience so magnificent. I'm joined bright and early as ever by Rob. Rob, Champions Cup quarterfinals are over. How are you feeling?
I'm just relieved to have you back, Richard, to be honest. That was quite tough last week, having to not only having to record by myself, kind of just a monologue, but also having to then listen to it while I edited it. As much as I love the sound of my own voice, that was quite excruciating. So it was quite nice to receive at least one comment about the fact that I shouted out Narbonne, but so at least for someone it brightened their day. But yeah. Just glad to have you back and we can do a proper podcast as normal compared to me just rattling on.
I'm sure the diehards appreciated the extra effort, going the extra mile.
I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we did the Pro de stuff because Pro de is just amazing at the moment. But yeah, how was your holiday?
Holiday was great. Yeah, very, very nice. Yeah, weather nice, scenery very good, pretty good food for the most part, and yeah, very agreeable to get a cheeky little week away.
Any food highlights? Was there any French crossovers? There wasn't like a beetroot croissant or something like that?
No, there's nothing like that.
Is it quite Eastern European, the food, or is it more like
no,
Mediterranean?
It's more a little bit kind of generic Italiano, I would say, but with some very good like seafood sprinkled in. Given you're
nice.
on the is it the Adriatic? I think down there. Could be wrong.
No idea.
But big French crossover in terms of people, without a shadow of a doubt, the most represented holiday group in both Montenegro and Dubrovnik in Croatia, where we ended up, was French. And to the extent that we were in a bar on the old fort in Dubrovnik one evening, and there was a bit of a medley of French tunes that was going off. Bit of Jeu de Saint-Champs-Élysées. I thought Dans les yeux d'Emily. I thought it was coming up, and I was like, the phone was at the ready.
Were you going to flip some tables and just?
I don't know about flips and tables. The barman in there looked pretty moody, but yeah, I thought it was. I thought there was going to be a little bit of Rosbif crossover, but not to be this time. But very
and the big question is, how was, no spoilers please, but how was the Big Hungry Caterpillar live this weekend?
Unbelievable.
I know there'll be people out there that, no spoilers for what happens at the end, but
well, good. It was excellent. We took my niece to the Hungry Caterpillar live at Bristol Old Vic, and look,
how long is the Hungry Caterpillar live?
Well, here's the thing, Rob. Okay, so it was a Hungry Caterpillar and Other Stories, which is very much in the small print. which is fine. You've got to kind of pad out's a bit unfair, but you want a little bit of that value for your ticket. And there's a lot of talk this weekend about the Colosseum, the febrile atmosphere in places like the Mayol. We've spoken about the Marcel Michelin, the Stade de la Rabine being tricky places to go. But my goodness me, if you're not the hungry caterpillar at the Old Vic, the crowd were baying for blood. The 2-year-olds in the crowd were so essentially it's a bit like when you go and see a gig and the headline act is getting pushed back and back and back. And the crowd were incensed by the lack of hungry caterpillar. Our niece must have asked about 25 times in the 3 shows before it, which were all is it Eric Carle, the author of the Hungry Caterpillar? They were all other iterations of
Are you saying he's a one-hit wonder, is he?
Well, I don't know. I think he's a one-hit wonder, but you need to give the crowd something before that because. Yeah, I'm telling you right now that Toulouse team would not have won at Bristol Old Vic against the Hungry Caterpillar.
Yeah,
such was the atmosphere. But it was good fun nonetheless.
Well, talking of 3 pretty average stories before one classic, how about that for a link? This weekend of Champions Cup rugby was pretty much that. It was. I always say this is my favourite rugby weekend of the year because it's historically 8 sides going right at it, 4 titanic contests, and it was pretty underwhelming until that final one on Sunday afternoon, a Sunday afternoon with 2 heavyweights of French and European rugby going at it right to the end in a that was a proper game. It was
good, wasn't it? It was a lot of fun. It was
really good.
Yeah, it had all of those. We've kind of, I think we're building a bit of a like cliches ingredient list for Heineken Cup classics, and 1 is two old big hitters. 2 is a commentator that we all that's familiar on the ear and harks back to a former glory, and the 3rd is just that tension. This had the old when was the last time we saw a Toulon team not score any tries, and it didn't want for that at all. It was just engrossing from start to finish. Yeah, what were your kind of immediate thoughts on it? Because it was quite it wasn't, and it was great for this, but it maybe wasn't the show of expressive rugby that we might have seen in on a dry day or in the top 14. But what it lacked in that, it certainly made up for in just sheer grunt and tension.
I think Miles Harrison summed it up really nicely. About kind of 50 minutes in, he said we could all watch this game tomorrow and we would see completely different things. It kind of felt like there was just so much going on that the little intricacies, I think we could get completely different reads of the game. So I'm intrigued to hear what you think. But my main thing is I think the penalty at the end is harsh. I think he doesn't let him up, and I think it's a penalty against Malia because he never releases Villiers.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I don't want to go too much into the refereeing, but I think you might be right. I really felt for Villiers because I thought he had a fantastic game, and it's funny, isn't it? The way like a mistake like that changes the complexion of so many things. Obviously, the result being one, but the kick from Saito is. Maybe it was planned to put up a big over-kicked one and hope someone dropped it, but he's missed his spot by about 20 yards. And
if that's his tactic, he needs to get himself into pro day. It happens the whole time.
And he box hit quite well before that, but it's just funny, isn't it, how that then becomes like a moment of great thinking rather than a bit of a mistake. But yeah, look,
I kind of thought about 65, 70 minutes. I was like, this is being decided by a mistake. You just know it is. It was around the time of the penalty that he missed from like wide out after the Gigashvili penalty, the scrum time, and I was like, that's not the mistake that's going to sway this game. There is going to be a glaring mistake for someone that is going to cost them this. And you kind of felt that that's probably going to be a Toulon player just because Toulouse generally don't make too many mistakes. I know they weren't perfect, but it kind of felt like the longer it went on, it felt a lot more like it was going to be Toulouse. or certainly that last 10 minutes, just because of the kind of champion qualities, I guess, that we've seen, and Toulon are not quite there, I don't think.
Yeah, for me, I really think Toulouse were deserved winners, as well as Toulon played in parts. And I think they had a pretty clear plan. Jaminet off the tee was immaculate, wasn't he? Which in itself is, the sort of thing that wins you these big games. And they certainly wouldn't have been undeserved winners. But I felt Toulouse throughout played with a little bit more ambition in tricky conditions. I think they were a little bit more varied in their kind of territory and keeping ball in hand, albeit at times there was a period in the first half in particular where the conditions were tricky, right? But they kind of shot themselves in the foot, both with some of their handling and I think their decision making at the breakdown. At times they gave away some really soft, like back-to-back penalties, which kind of let Toulon off the hook. And I think fundamentally as well is that obviously he didn't last the full distance, and nor would he, but they had by far and away the outstanding difference maker on the pitch in Manny Meafou, who in that first half in particular was just, I mean, we speak about him quite a lot, and I think I wouldn't say I've thought the jury's out, but I think sometimes there have been games that his impact hasn't been a huge amount more than a couple of big hits and turnover. Whereas I thought his carrying was immense, his offloading was immense, but also he's got that, like, or at least in this game, that sort of sense of timing and being in the right place and being able to not just getting the ball away out of contact, but getting it away like at the right time, if that makes sense. Just holding on for a split second longer to bring a runner on. And that was evidenced obviously by in the Grau try that was disallowed, and the penalty just before half time, which I think was actually really important, came from him kind of getting over the gain line and getting the ball away. As much as there, I thought Toulon got away with a little bit of the breakdown, but I thought, was it Villiers there who seemed to have a pretty perfect jackal?
That was harsh, yeah.
It was like, that is tricky. Brilliant, amazing game. I thought Toulouse decent value for it in the end, but yeah, that's not always how it works out, and I don't think you could have begrudged Toulon on this one.
I thought it was just on Meafou. I thought you're right. It's kind of, I thought it was like a sharpness and an energy to him that was that's not always there. Like, he looked really sharp, and it's kind of like a pouncing at the right opportunity, like in defence and at the breakdown or whatever. He was kind of his timing, I guess you put it, as you would say. Like, I just noticed that it was kind of key interventions, and he was just, the ball was probably exposed for a short amount of time, and he just pounces. I thought he was definitely the best player. There was just that I've just reminded myself. There was a bit, I think it's before the Marchand non-try, where Toulouse go for the driving maul, and I think it's like somehow Toulon repel it, and I think it's just big Brian Alonoisi, like it's him and Priso just in the middle, like somehow stopping that maul, which when you consider some of the players they're up against is a fair old effort. So it was fascinating because Toulon do have an enormous pack, and they were very much the better side at scrum time through, like, for the majority of it. And they kind of, their line out wasn't fantastic. What did you make of Ribbons' performance? Because we've given him a big shout out recently, a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just on the scrum stuff as well, I thought the scrum was interesting because in the first half, when it was Priso up against Aldegheri and probably more on Bai's side, I actually thought Toulouse held up pretty well. In the pre-game, Bernard Jackman spoke quite a lot about Becca Gigashvili, and I think he brought him in from Grenoble to Chambéry. So sorry, the other way around, from Chambéry to Grenoble, but he's obviously gone on to great things at Toulon. But obviously he knew him, and therefore it made for quite a nice story. But he highlighted that Bai maybe isn't the biggest scrummager. Actually, I think he held up pretty well in the first half without any dominance, and then it was Gross on Merkler was doing a bit of a job, wasn't it, in the second half, and looking bloody good while he did it. But on Ribbons, I mean, I thought
Gigashvili mysteriously comes back on at like 65 minutes.
I saw that. I was like,
Setiano basically gets like 15 minutes of game time, and there's no injury or anything.
Yeah, I was really
You see
surprised
that a
by
little bit. You do see a little bit of that there was one last week. I can't remember with it
that. A little
specifically who it was.
phantom
Yeah,
replacement.
there's just a random prop or a tight 5 forward just randomly comes back on. But yeah,
Yeah.
go on.
Ribbons, I thought he was pretty good. I think the line out was a little bit iffy, wasn't he? Or wasn't it? And
I
he's kind
think
of
it was
obviously
the
at the heart
line
of
out
that.
generally. I don't think that was him though. I
And
think his line out.
Toulouse's line out was a bit gammy in the first half, so I think they lost their first three, didn't they? I thought he was pretty good. I thought some of his carrying was excellent,
Yeah.
but perhaps not quite as. It's one of those things, isn't it, where there's a name on everyone's lips. I don't think he was quite as impactful in this game as a couple of match reports have made out, if that makes sense. But he was very good, and well, I don't know if we can talk about it another time, but I think the questions around him and the Lions are quite an interesting one.
Well, they said after the game, the guy I don't know his somebody like Ross Davis, is that the guy? The guy that
The Welsh guy on
fronts it?
Premier Sports, yeah. I'm
Yeah,
not
he was
sure
like,
it's
oh,
that.
that's David Ribbons' Lions chance taking a big blow there today. And I was like, is that because he's now no longer in knockout rugby, or is because he thought he was crap? Because I think some of his basics, certainly early on, weren't fantastic. But you're right, he's just everywhere. Like I think,
Yeah.
yes, Meafou was fantastic, but Ribbons was so much more prominent in terms of being around the ball the whole time than Flamont, for example. And I think that's one of the skills that Toulon have in their tight five. I really notice it with Sinclair and Priso and Bobigny, like who I thought was brilliant, actually, really physical in defence. They just seem to be near the ball a lot, like around the ruck and the maul and contact area, which I think is what makes them so physical, is because those big guys are there a lot, like they're getting involved a lot, which I think is really impressive in itself. And well, I feel like a better judge of rugby, or someone who knows a lot more about the intricacies of rugby than me, or forward play, will be able to determine whether he had a good game or not. But for me, I think really drilling down into him, I think Ribbons still had a very good game. I think it's probably not quite enough because he was not the best player on the pitch and because he wasn't faultless, which I think he probably had to be, that possibly does dent his Lions chance.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind
But then
of
Willis
think
wasn't
that,
fantastic either.
yeah, Willis, I said earlier, a lot of that poor decision making. It was back to back. He got pinged twice
Yeah.
just for where it just didn't need to. He just didn't need to be competing at those breakdowns, and they were quite obvious as well. With Ribbons, for me, I think the thing that's in his favour is that the Lions are probably not lacking, but this sort of like, obviously Ribbons actually played four, didn't he? But he probably, I don't know, he
He's a
could
big bloke.
play in that big bloke, that tight head lock that's really been in vogue in the last 4 or 5 years with Skelton and Meafou in Europe in particular. And I guess the equivalents potentially for the Lions are George Martin and Joe McCarthy are the two that stand out as the big, heavy kind of carriers. And I mean, I love George.
Cummins will still be injured.
Yeah,
And he'd be the other one because he's so good in the tight, like in the maul stuff.
Yeah, but I think more of a. I think
Martin actually does play five quite a lot.
He does, yeah, he does. But he's very different kind of player, right? In terms of he's the 4/6, he plays at five. But I think Martin, fantastic player, maybe not quite as dynamic in the carry. McCarthy, I think maybe it's still very young, maybe like flattered to deceive a little bit at points as well. So I wonder if the way Ribbons could get in is because there isn't quite as much depth in that role as say see a lot of talk around Henry Pollock and the Lions, and I don't doubt that he's good enough, but there's the Q of sevens is phenomenal. So but yeah, I mean he's having a remarkable time of it. And I think with Ribbons,
he's a far superior player than, say, a James Ryan.
Yeah, I think so. And he, for me,
who could well end up going.
Yeah, absolutely. But Ribbons, for me, there's obviously a lot of English guys in France now, and there's a lot of talk around some of them being back at, would you pick them in the England side? What would that combined 15 look like of France-based English players? For me, a lot of them had a real good crack of the whip for England and had their time and have moved on, or moved on past their peak or whatever it might be. Ribbons is the one that really stands out for me. It's probably never
Collier.
got the game
Ribbons
time.
and
Collier, sorry. Yeah, Collier, of course, as well. That really stood out as they were utterly underutilized by
and Dan
England the time they were here. Well, the second coming of Dan Lancaster's here, isn't it? Without his dad on the touchline. So, yeah, fabulous player is the summary.
Very nice. Anything else you want to talk about on this Toulon v Toulouse game?
I think the only thing for me is
Chaminade was masterful, I thought.
Yeah. The kicking in those conditions was remarkable, really.
But talking of kicking some spuds on Thomas Ramos, it's very easy to say. I feel like I say this every week. Like, I can't remember a time. Obviously, I can't remember because why would you? But I can't remember a time where there's been a noisier crowd for a kick.
Yeah.
And given he'd had a pretty iffy day, I thought on the decision making, the battle of the two fly halves that I love to get my claws stuck into. I thought Garbisi's decision making was he just doesn't look very in control, and he looks like he's very reactive, and some of his decision making isn't that good. Whereas I thought Entrées was he did what he does of stepping in at certain times to make right, I'm going to kick it now, lads, and then he executes a really lovely kick. I thought Entrées was pretty good.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I did.
And I thought Garbisi just isn't in. He's just not. Doesn't. I don't know. He just didn't look in control. Not in control is not quite the right word, but just doesn't look convincing in a way.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think for me, Garbisi, I didn't think it necessarily looked like he didn't have a plan. I just think his execution of some of his territorial kicking was as good as it could have been. And I think a little bit of that in the first half in particular was that most of their possession came off loose balls, drop balls, and they seemed maybe a little bit unsure. They kind of would go for the first phase, and then I don't think he found touch as much as he could. But I don't think he had a terrible game. The only two other things for me were quite enjoyable. Moller and Mignoni, best pals on the sidelines, was hilarious.
Yeah,
it was like who could be the more melodramatic Frenchman on the sidelines. It was great to see. And then just on Ramos, he was in tears at the post-game interview after the kick. It obviously, which is not, I mean, the bloke's human. Of course, he's, I don't doubt he's an emotional guy, but generally what that emotion you see is a kind of like stubborn looking, borderline, bit arrogant. And yeah, it was quite something to see that. So, but what an amazing kick under pressure, and the little one hand to the air celebration was class as well.
Yeah. I thought Remat was good, but I quite enjoyed Ian Madigan. And the other thing was, it sounds like it wasn't ever going to go to kicks. Like at the end.
Tries.
I think so. But I was like
the old boundary comeback.
Yeah. Oh well, best way to decide a win, isn't it? Toulouse would have had Ramos, Kinghorn, Malia, Entrées as their first four. Their fifth, I don't know who it would have been. My money would have been on their other fly half, Thibaut Flamand. I reckon Malbach is stepping up and absolutely nailing one from the touchline, though, isn't he? Like
wrong foot.
Yeah, but Toulon would have also had Jaminet, Saran, Garbisi. I reckon Sanzel's probably done some kicking in his time, and then they're looking a bit. Then it's like Villiers, Drehan. There weren't any forwards that I thought, they could do it. Not with Sinks injured. I reckon Sinclair could have had a go. Jean-Baptiste Gross.
100%.
I would love to see some kicks. I really hope the inevitable final between them and Leinster comes down to kicks, and it's just and they don't have anyone other than I hope it's like James Lowe hits the corner flag or something like. The semi-final is going to be up against Bordeaux. I've got some strong views about this game, and it's not really about the game.
As in the Munster match.
Yeah.
I mean, Munster, ridiculously tough assignment to go away twice in a week and a little bit run out of puff. My very basic thoughts on this were it sort of get the full spectrum of Bordeaux excellence and ability to shoot themselves in the foot was fully on display, and that's pretty much my notes. But I'll let you come off the long run, Rob.
It was all about Bordeaux, or should we call them Bordeaux Begley, as they were referred to throughout by Royal Nugent. That was riled me up, pardon the pun. Just the pretty much coverage was all like, it was cliche central. Like it was, oh, Bordeaux play loose, don't want to kick loose, don't want to kick long to them, don't want to play into their hands. They will get to 60 minutes and they will burn out. Where has the evidence of that been? Also, what team defends like a team like Bordeaux? What team has to defend that Bordeaux attack for 60 minutes and then thinks, oh no, now we'll pounce? Like, they're going to be the ones blowing. But there was no like even in this talk, like you don't have to have watched top 14 like we do. And I think Spritz and Scrum said it on their podcast last week. Like, this was the reason why we set up. There was some stuff after the game. They're like, this is the reason why we set up this podcast, because they get frustrated about people chatting nonsense about Benetton and Italy teams. And that's part of the reason why we set up this, because some of the crap that gets like, no one seems to know anything. That's why I thought Ian Madigan was actually quite good on in the Toulon game, but. Like, it was none of it. You could have even watched this tournament and know that they are quite fragile at scrum time, because Leicester did it to them. And actually, somehow there was a stat that they had the best line out in the competition at 93%, which shows how little they've been tested in this competition. Because anyone that watches top 14 will know that Bordeaux's line out is an absolute shambles. And actually, it was pretty good in this game. Well, certainly while Lamotte was on. But like, Munster's big thing that they could have gone for was line out and scrum. And the first scrum of the game, Bordeaux are going backwards, and it's like, oh, that's a bit of a surprise. And it's like, no, it's not. They're so flaky at scrum time. And it was actually Bernard Jackman after Toulouse game was like, I think the tight five of Toulouse are just going to have a bit too much for Bordeaux. It's like, finally, someone's watched some Bordeaux games. Like, yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's more just like, oh, this is how it's all about not trying to get blown away by Bordeaux. It's like, well, actually, no, you've got to go out and win the game. How do you win the game? Well, they've got weaknesses that isn't they're a bit loose. It's actual fundamental weaknesses in their game. Their breakdown work is largely based around their tight five and guys like Tameifuna and Poirier. If you've got a back row and guys like Ty Burn, they might be able to get to breakdown quicker. That was another area that they could have spoken about. And ultimately, it all counted for nothing because Munster absolutely fucked it at line-out time and were just pretty dreadful for large amounts of the game. And Bordeaux had them at arm's length. And Nico Amashakele decided to pluck a penalty try out of nowhere just to make it interesting.
That was quite right.
That is one of the most... That is ridiculous. That is absolutely... like, because it's not like... I think they said it's not like it's Louis Bielbiaré. Like, you've got 13... I don't know much about Tom Farrell. I don't know if he's quick. Maybe he's rapid. But the covering defender is Mathieu Jalibert, who is rapid. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm glad I got that off my chest. Watch some games, pundits, please. And if you don't, listen to this podcast and we'll tell you what to listen. I did some lovely videos for TikTok, at Rosbeast Rugby on TikTok. It's only 2 minutes of your time.
Call to arms is out. Yeah, it was... I know what you mean. I didn't see any of the pre-match. In fact, I haven't seen any of the pre-match of any of the tournament apart from the Toulon and Toulouse game for about 15 minutes. So
there was a point when all four quarterfinals had happened, and all I had seen was the Leinster game, so not involving a French side, the build up to the Bordeaux game, and about the first 5 minutes of the Bordeaux game. That was kind of where I was at. So that was kind of where my time in my weekend was basically the Bordeaux build-up game, build-up to the game. So yeah. So I was particularly paying some real attention to that pre-match for the Bordeaux game.
It should make for we'll obviously we're a little while away, but it should make for a pretty amazing occasion, the semi-final. Yeah, the on the sort of mini, because there was a bit of a mini Bordeaux implosion towards the end, wasn't there?
There was like a 5 minutes of mad.
The Cazo second yellow cracked me up, like just grabbing a lad round like the collar when you're already on a yellow card to get red carded was amazing. And actually there was a 2 minute period there where you're like, they could concede 2 late tries, and as it happened, they went up the other end with Maxime Lucu, very defiant, wasn't he?
That was amazing brilliant. Cover tackle.
The cover tackle, I can't remember who it was on, but it was,
Abrahams.
It was class.
There was quite rightly man of the match. On Cyril Cazo, that was his 200th game for Bordeaux, which I was like, that's remarkable. This was really, really aging, really humbling, because I was like, hey, I feel like he's still pretty young. And I looked him up and said, oh, he's 1995. Yeah, he's way younger than us. And I was like, oh my God, he's 30. Like, it's like, yes, he is a lot younger than us, but shit, he's 30.
He's also just signed a 3-year extension, I think. I saw yesterday. Yeah, so celebrating semi-finals with. Will he get like a 1-game ban, 2 yellow cards?
I don't know. Different offences. It feels quite harsh.
Yeah, Possibly. I don't know. Cool. And then
Just
final
just
word.
one final thing on that. I was worried he wasn't going to get there, but Louis Bielbiaré, do you know when he last didn't score in a game?
Oh, what a great question. Very start of this season, like I don't know, Bordeaux away at Clermont or something like that.
No, it was in 2024, but it was the last game of 2024, so December.
Okay.
It was the home game against Toulon, but he has
Ah,
scored in every single game in 2025, and he scored two in quite in about half of them as well.
it's
He's
mad, isn't it?
27 tries from 23 games this season, all competitions.
Pretty impressive stuff. The final slight damp squib from a French perspective of the weekend, my boys Castres. Sadly, the 1 point win away from home, Franklin's Gardens, wasn't to be, and it was never looking particularly close. Yeah, I don't know if you've got any major thoughts on this. It to me felt a bit like a bit of an old-fashioned French team away in Europe sort of vibe, but maybe it's a little bit unfair. What do you reckon?
I think that is a bit unfair. I mean, having just slagged off the pundits for not really knowing much about the UBB game or like what to look out for. Everyone was very dismissive of Cass before this game, and I kind of also did a preview saying it would be a lot closer than people think, and Cass can do this. And yeah, I felt like I mean, not to say that anyone really knew anything about Cast in the build-up, but there were a lot of cliches being churned out for Cass, and I think ultimately they just couldn't live. You called it out. It's like last week there's a high chance that they just won't be able to live with the pace of Northampton, especially if they play like they did against Claremont. And ultimately that was what it was. I thought they just couldn't, as much as they defended, and they defended brilliantly at times.
Yeah, they did.
There was just each attack, it was God, that's good defense. And then there's only so many times you can scramble and have players making amazing cover tackles or big hits, and there's only so many times you can do that with the pace that they were playing at. And it was just a kind of when the dam is going to break at some
Yeah.
point on basically every attack. It wasn't like as much as a 51-point scoreline is kind of like, oh, they were blown away. Well, they were, but it wasn't like first phase attacking moves that just tear them to shreds, or it wasn't, coughing up possession or defense optional or whatever people want to call it. It was actually just Northampton playing really, really bloody well, and Cast not being able to get their game plan into the game because they just couldn't. They didn't.
Yeah.
They couldn't get their feet into the game. And I think the fact their timing on the scrum, like the how many times they get done for early engagement, and that really would have helped them. Like it was such an easy out for Northampton and let them off the hook a few times. And a few times they did get that scrum going when it was Collier versus Yogan, they were good and they did get penalties and stuff like that. It was just, it was a shame for Cast.
Yeah, I think that was the one. Northampton are obviously they've struggled a bit in the Premiership, and they've had injuries and sometimes struggled to get their full team out. But like when they are all there, it's an outstanding side, and they were some of their attacking play in this was magnificent. They've also got guys who are in such rich veins of form as well at the moment, with like Tommy Freeman's looking kind of nigh on untouchable at points. The thing for me that did disappoint a little bit was there's a bit of talk about Cast discipline in this, and a few little like shoulder charges and little shots going in. I don't think it was quite as bad as some people were making out. It was a little bit petulant, but I don't think there was anything wild in there. Although I do think the decision, once it was given a penalty, the cover tackle from Badger on I can't remember the guy's name. Is it the Australian lad in the back row? Kemeny, that's it.
I feel like a yellow card, no penalty try would have been the right call there.
I don't really see how it's not a penalty try, because he's there. If the foul doesn't take place. I didn't think it was a red. I thought it was like a desperation tackle rather than anything like reckless. But sorry, going back to the one thing that I did think was disappointing was their discipline around the scrum, because it would have been a massive weapon. And you just saw, I think it was, well, one, I don't think there were that many scrums,
right,
which didn't help them. But the first scrum in particular, like they're running through it basically, and there's no doubt they've got the nudge or will have the nudge. But then I think in the first half they conceded a free kick and then a couple of back-to-back penalties, as you say, just for like pre-engaging and all the whatever it's called, the break foot and things like that. And you're like, that is such, as you say, such an easy out for arguably the one thing that's your big differentiator over Northampton. And look, would that have made a huge difference? I don't know. But if you can string together some scrum penalties, guys are going to the bin, you're in the right parts of the pitch. It was I don't know. It felt from also a very brilliant and very experienced front row. Maybe they just got the wrong side of PRD, which can happen. But it was a little bit frustrating. But there we go.
Well, it might have meant that they at one point would have taken the lead, which don't think ever happened. No, never happened. And had they, they could have got some penalties or some territory or put Northampton under pressure, whereas it felt that first half, 17-10, they've done pretty well to come out of that with that result. What can they do second half? And actually, it was just more of the same second half, and they kind of ran out of path. I thought the defending from the backs was brilliant. I thought like Fernandez and Lebrun and Goodhue, some of their defence was so good. Palace as well, I thought it was pretty good. Bit of a wise old head. The only bad tackle to Moore at the end.
Oh, it was amazing, wasn't it? Yeah. He's like, it's my last season. I'm not skipping the like held aloft around the Pierre Fab because I've got a busted shoulder from Tom Pearson. He's just like, nah, on you go.
That was the only one.
That's why he's played 300 whatever top 14 games. Like.
Knows what he's doing. Yeah, I think it was tough for Castres. I think they just couldn't live with them, and it was a shame. I was really, really invested in, of all the games that I was kind of worried about seeing the score of, that I was kind of really didn't want to see the score of. It was that game, just in case there had been some heroic Castres victory, because I felt so invested. Like I didn't if I'd had a spoiler on the Toulouse game, I wouldn't have been that bothered, and certainly the Ube Bay one. And yeah, if Munster had won, it would have been a shock, but I would have been like fine. But like the Castres one was the one I was like, I just don't want to know the score for this one because it could be amazing, and it was a bit disappointing.
Final question on this one: has Louis Lebrun ended Henry Pollock's Lions' hopes with that hit in the first half? I could not believe what I was watching. It was so funny.
Probably not, because he was amazing for the rest of the game. Also, just on him, like, I've been a big fan of his, or championing his cause for the Lions for a long time now. I think I can say that. But there's a lot of chat about him, about, you love him if he's on your side and you hate him if he's not. And this was the first game where I felt like I wasn't on his side, because when he came on against Leicester were miles up, so it didn't really matter. But I was like, God, he's a pain in the arse, isn't he?
Yeah.
Like I really wish when he put the ball down for that second one, I really wish it had been like, if Shamey wasn't playing, but Van der Berg. Or Maravat is like charging, or Papali is like charging towards him and just flattens him. It's like, oh, sorry, mate, should have put it down quicker.
He's had a few reds, hasn't he, this year? He would be good value for it.
They did also, that showed a bit of impact. The 4 injuries that they had in the second row, as good as Maravat's good. I thought he was pretty good. Nakarawa wasn't as amazing as he was last week, partly because they barely got him into the game. If they'd had Van der Berg and maybe a Jadreziak, but I think Van der Berg and Nakarawa with Maravat off the bench would have been really quite formidable. But a bit of a shame.
There we go. And just to wrap up, I suppose, the European Action Challenge Cup, we've got in a few weeks' time an all-French semi-final where Lyon, who got a away win at the Ospreys in front of 3,500 people, like really not much fun. 2018 away. A little bit of a change side, but some power on the bench. I think Guillard got man of the match in this, having come on at half time. What a guy. We'll take on Racing, who was actually quite an impressive away win in Connacht, 43-40, I think it was, and played an hour with, I was about to say 10 men, that would be a good effort, an hour with 14 men. Following Hambosi, I can't remember who it was on, but little bit kind of like the Badger tackle.
Naituvi, 12 minutes.
Oh, was it Naituvi, was it? Was it 12 minutes? Oh, I've got that totally wrong. But yeah, it was like the Badger tackle, but with a bit more Fijian
grunt
flair, if you want to call it that. Yeah, pretty impressive, impressive win against actually a decent looking Connacht side. Owen Farrell off the bench, drop goal. He looks like he's getting back to something a bit more useful, and that was underlined by a reckless entry into a ruck, which nearly brought Connacht back into it. But surely signs that Faz is heading in the right direction, you would think.
A few yellows this season, hasn't he?
Yeah, for a guy
for a man that's not played.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, that sets up quite a fun semi, I think.
Yeah, that is quite a fun semi. What's the other game? Edinburgh Bath.
The other Edinburgh Bath, which is also quite a fun semi.
Bath should really win that competition, shouldn't
You'd think so. You would think so. Bath Racing
full noise Leon with that pack could cause Bath some problems, but yeah,
we'll see. Quickly then, some of those teams, I say some of those, all of those teams, Bath, Connacht will be involved in the return of the top 14 this weekend. Rob, your beloved Poe will be on telly.
It doesn't matter because I'm going to be there.
Oh, of course you are. I'm sorry, I'd forgotten you're there. I thought we were 2 weeks away. You're
no, I'm there for the long haul.
That's slightly ironic, isn't it? The one time you could have watched it on the telly.
They've been on telly. They've been on telly twice this year. One, I was in van. Second time, I'm actually at the ground. So yeah,
excellent. Well, rather than muddle on about top 14, talk us through your trip. That's way more interesting.
I mean, the fixture gods have conspired against me a little bit. I was hoping for we're flying into Carcassonne on Friday, going straight to Toulouse, and of the 8 games in Pro D2, the one that is on the Thursday night before we fly out is the Colomiers game. And despite the fact that Toulouse has 1 million clubs within about an hour's travel from it, there is no game anywhere near Toulouse on Friday night. No Nationale this weekend, and yeah, Colomiers on Friday. And they're Colomiers at home to Montauban or Agen, and then the other of one of Agen or Montauban is away. But yeah, pretty frustrating that. But we're then off to Pau bright and early for the early kickoff, and then 3 or 4 days of cycling in the Pyrenees. Then we're getting down to Bayonne. But on the Thursday, we are going to watch what is now quite a key game of Biarritz versus Béziers in the derby. Just about a Pyrenean derby, maybe.
Yeah, not sure about that.
They're both the kind of spare parts in that. But the Friday night, we are going to the Stade André et Guy Boniface to watch Mont-de-Marsan versus Dax. And then the following day, we are down to San Sebastian on the Bayonne bus, I should note. Actually, no, it's not the Bayonne bus, but it's I booked it through Bayonne. We are down to San Sebastian for Bayonne v Pau.
Very nice.
So this coming weekend, we only have one game, which is a bit of a shame. But it's a big one. And what a time to get Bordeaux.
Yeah. What do you reckon? Do you think they'll...
Well, they've got 2 games now. It's an away game, which helps. They'll probably rest a few. They've then got La Rochelle next weekend, and then they've got their semi-final. So if they're going to rest some players, you'd imagine it would probably be this weekend, given that they've had 2 European games. They've had guys like Luke who will have played quite a lot of rugby over the last couple of weeks. So hopefully a bit of a changed up side. Toulouse go away to Stade Francais on Sunday night. That's an interesting one, given that you'd imagine Toulouse will rest a few. I mean, just we didn't talk about it, but there was a lot of chat about, Paul Grau is, he's not Antoine Dupont. It's like, well, no, but there were stats about like with and without Dupont. It's like, well, yes, but it's also with and without Ramos, Kinghorn, Meafou, lies and statistics, isn't it?
I think you'd be failing your GCSE statistics with that sort of with those
if you went back to
you?
Last year, fair enough, because he was playing in quite a lot of the ones during the internationals when it was him and like he was playing at 10 with Grau at 9 and stuff like that. But yeah, that'll be interesting. Stade haven't had a game for ages. What have they been up to? The other interesting one is obviously a repeat of a couple of weekends ago. Perpignan hosting Racing 92 down at Amy Giral again. They will have a much stronger side than they had out last time, you'd imagine. I think they will go, we will see Brooks, Oviedo, Ruiz, Berrio will start. That's La Rochelle. That's an interesting one. Bayonne, probably quite a good game for them to get right now, I think. Especially with Bayonne having the big showpiece game the following week. That could be quite a rotated side. Any that catch your eye?
No, I think you've mentioned those there. I think the one thing, it does look, all the games now are consequential because of where we're at the end of the season, but for strong Perpignan beat Racing. Stade Francais maybe at home to Toulouse. Van have got to go to Castres, and Castres they've won a lot at home. They've flat to deceive sometimes, but I can't see Van getting too much out of that. And you might start to see. Well, yeah, but they haven't been great on the road, have they? And you would think going to form, Castres would win that, and suddenly there's a little bit more of a gap if that happens. So
yeah,
although that may inspire, if it wasn't needed already, a bit more of a performance from Van. We will see. A few Breton flags at the Mayol on Sunday as well, which is fun to see.
Interesting. How's that happened?
It's a long way. Somewhere.
Yeah. Maybe they're getting ready for the Derby game that they've got in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, the week after.
Because it's a shame, because there are like a few like spare parts in that Derby weekend.
They've called it like
Biarritz and Bezier.
They've called it like Fan Day now, haven't they? Rather than Derby Day, I think, in case anyone spots that slight issue. Right, should we leave that there and return for a little bit of Pro Day there?
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Commercial Insurance. Business owners, meet Progressive Insurance. They make it easy to get discounts on commercial auto insurance and find coverages to grow with your business. Quote in as little as 6 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliated and third-party insurers. Discounts and coverage selections not available in all states or situations.
All right. Pro Day Deux, we are reaching the denouement of the Pro Day Deux marathon, and it was mostly fairly home winsy at the weekend, but with some late drama, and Brive continuing clearly that Friday night hoodoo as well. Brive have smashed the hoodoo ceiling there, win away at Argennes, who'd been in decent form. What stood out for you this weekend, Rob?
I actually watched quite a lot of this, and because I watched it in the gym while I was doing some cycling, I've completely forgotten most of it. Valence Romans were good. I think they scored an absolute brilliant try from Masese Mawalu, who is at the more rotund end of the Fijian spectrum. You know how like some of them are just carrying a bit of timber, but yeah, they're still rapid and explosive. He's definitely one of them.
In the Rupeni mold.
Yeah. Not quite like. What is the spectrum like? Rupeni Thao to Nico Matawalu at the other end. I'd say he's between Kathangi and Rupeni,
nice.
but not quite full Thao. Penalty try in the 82nd minute to snatch it for Valence Romans. That is a huge result for them. That basically puts them clear of relegation now. I say that, but it gives them a bit of a gap, and that is somehow they're ninth. I think with the kind of run-ins, they're 8 points clear of Aurillac now, so that's quite a big gap in 4 games to lose. You kind of wanted to touch on Grenoble a bit there, didn't you?
Yeah, it was more of a question because Grenoble they had a 13-point lead a few weeks back. It's now been cut to 5. And I was going to pose the question, but I think what I was maybe going to say is, are they having a bit of a wobble? Do they need to be worried? My thinking is probably not, to be honest with you. They've got Nice at home this week, and 2 of those games, I mean, the Argennes one conceding 2 tries basically after the buzzer is quite something. This one, I know they were very aggrieved to have had a try ruled out around the hour mark, I think it was. There was some good histrionics on the sidelines. But I think they're going to be fine. And a lot of teams are going away to these places and getting hammered, even in the top 6. But yeah, fair play to Valence for pulling that out. And it looked like it was kicking off at the Stade Georges Pompidou, I think it is. There was some serious feeling in that. A little bit of a derby, isn't it? So that was cool to see.
I reckon they're a bit miffed not to get them as their derby game, to be honest, because it should be.
Yeah.
I think Oyonnax should be going to Nevers, but never mind. But Oyonnax do go to Grenoble, so Grenoble have got Nice at home and then Oyonnax at home. So I think they'll be all right. And also, it's probably good to is it the losses they need to have?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
There's an element of that, isn't it? Like,
get a bonus point, refocus the mind.
Well, just like get your losses out the way, get your bad performances out the way, and then pick up momentum now and hit your straps in the running. Colomiers, really impressive against Aurillac. I think the two concerning performances for me from what I saw were Aurillac. Their defence was not fantastic. They just seemed to fall off a lot of tackles. I think not necessarily amazing attacking play from Colomiers, although Colomiers are scoring a lot of points at the moment, so maybe it is just putting the sides under pressure. But it didn't seem on first viewing to be really destructive carries or really intricate play. It was kind of quite simple dummy lines and angles of running that, I mean, maybe they're just executing them really well because they are scoring a lot of points, but it didn't look like particularly challenging. The fact that they are losing quite a few games, conceding a lot of points, is a concern. The other side that I think should be really concerned is Oyonnax, because they looked, of all the teams, they looked lackluster. And I think so Mont-de-Marsan, we are used to being a bit up and down, but no matter what, they are frantic and they do play at times with like that hell-bent energy. And they showed it in this game, despite the fact they only got 15 points. And Oyonnax didn't. Like, they just looked off the pace, which I think is a real concern. Zach Holmes got hooked after 32 minutes. He missed a couple of kicks, got hooked for Chris Smith, but some not tricky kicks, but not easy kicks, but ones that probably ultimately cost them that game. And I think largely Mont-de-Marsan were pretty good value for that win. I know it's kind of quite near the end, and like Oyonnax tried to go the length to win it, but they only scored 3 points in the second half, Oyonnax, and that's pretty pathetic, really. I know Mont-de-Marsan didn't score a load of points in the second half, but even with kind of changing it up, Chris Smith coming on and bringing some guys off the bench, there was no kind of change in impetus.
Yeah, I think the thing that looks a bit strange, worrying, whatever you want to call it from the outside, is that they obviously had a really poor start to the big parts of the first half of the season. They were really poor. They seemed to have sort of wrested back a bit of momentum and were kind of, I think they were 8th for a little while, and were looking at, they were a couple of wins off that, the sort of barrage top 6 as like a bit of an outside bet. And they've seemed to have slumped back into, if not always the performances, then the results of what they were doing at the start of the year, which I think once you kind of wrestled that back, pretty worrying if you sneak back into it. So yeah, we'll see. And they've got, as you said, they've got to go to Grenoble in a couple of weeks. I'm not quite sure who they got next weekend.
They are at home to Valence.
Which, I mean, Valence will be playing really
But then they go away to Grenoble and Saxby.
Yeah, finish at home to Provence. I mean, depending on how things are looking there, Provence may work. Provence might be locked in third, and that's probably their best hope because if Provence have to go and win that game, that could spell trouble.
Yeah, and it's I mean, I think people may have seen it. I put a tweet up of kind of the respective run-ins, and I think Oyonnax and Biarritz are the ones that I would have as the kind of having the horror run-ins. Mont-de-Marsan have got a tricky run-in, and the others are kind of all right. Argennes have got a mixed bag. Aurillac a pretty decent run-in. Dax have got a pretty good run-in, to be fair. I think they'll be all right, even though they seem to have completely fallen away in terms of their form, and they didn't look good again this weekend away at Montauban. Montauban were pretty good value for it, but Dax weren't anywhere near them really, despite the fact that Montauban played over a half with 14 men. So
just looking at Oyonnax now on the table, you'd have got decent odds on a dodgy little bet builder that said that at this point in the year, the only team with fewer wins in the league than Oyonnax would be Nice. Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
But Nice did pick up one win this weekend.
Yeah,
they've done the double over Biarritz, haven't they?
Oh, did they beat them twice? I think they did the double over Argennes, didn't they?
It was Argennes, maybe.
Yeah, but another Brunus winner. There aren't many of them in Pro D2, and Nice have taken another one down. So fair play. And this again, last play of the game, penalty, scenes. Everyone, they're going absolutely mental at the end. It was class.
They were pretty good value for it. Like, they were quite good. They were
got out to a really good lead, didn't they? And sort of fluffed it a little bit, but
they can't have done the double because Nice Biarritz were unbeaten at home for ages. I've made that up.
Yeah. Alrighty, we mentioned a couple of next week's fixtures. Give me one that you fancy.
I'm going to go for Saxby Montauban.
Yeah, fair.
Oh, you're going to go for Provence.
Yeah, Friday night.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a huge game, isn't it? Potentially Provence getting cut adrift from the automatic semi-spot final spot if they lose that away from home, which, yeah, maybe they will. We'll see. But yeah, exciting stuff. Nonetheless, should we leave that there? Oh, a quick word actually before we go on to the Petit-Fours. There is one round left of the regular season of Nationale, and where it's really to play for. Chambry clear on 98. Bottom of the table, Langon are in that barrage access match rather spot. They're 3 points adrift of Marcon Barruel, who do have to go away to Chambry, or sorry, host Chambry next week. Whereas Langon go to Narbonne, who are in second. So yeah, we will see what happens there. But the barrage spots do appear to be
Narbonne, who lost not only did they lose El Classic Ord, they lost the Ord Firm Derby.
Yeah,
as someone called it out.
Correctly called it out with
I can't
hindsight.
remember who that was, but sorry for not giving you credit.
Yeah, no, it's good. I enjoyed that tweet. Well, a Narbonne fan in somewhere in Wales, which is quite cool. But it looks like it's all sorted bar the positions because Massey, having been on that amazing run, lost a couple in a row. They're in seventh on 77 points, and Albi ahead of them in 84. So, yeah, will be decided. But our boys Perriga will be in the mix, which is very exciting.
And they play Rouen this weekend, so they could even get a home barrage game.
TBC. Right, back with set some Petit-Fours.
Saturday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Saturday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Saturday. Saturday, bring it on.
Rob, in the madcap world, French rugby, what outside of the matches has caught your attention this week?
I mean, there was a lot of stuff this weekend about, I've got to be careful throwing stones from my glass house here. There was a lot of stuff this weekend going in the lead up about Jaminet, the Jaminet transfer saga, and he is still owed quite a lot of money apparently by Toulouse. And let's just say that, you know, there's a few grand on a barber in Turkey that will be weighting that Melvin Jaminet cash, because I don't know what's happening with his lid, basically.
You can say it, Rob. You can say it.
Yeah. The biscuit is growing and it's starting to look a bit odd. And I think I can't really imagine him bald either. So I feel like he needs to get the lid done. Toulouse needs to pay him that money back, and then
quite sharp features though, isn't he? So it could probably suit I did see Shay Tonton, who we do follow on Twitter, who are hilarious, if a bit reckless in some of the stuff they put out. Did have a picture of Jaminet, and they were talking about tiles falling off the roof, I think was the translation for which. I don't know if that's like a French turn of phrase for going bald, but they were getting stuck into him. I think at this point, this was just after, I think the tweet went out just after he'd nailed his sixth kick from miles out in horrible conditions. So there was a bit of spite there. Yeah, I'm sure when he gets that 400 grand back, or he might just bick it. Who knows? Support both.
The other financial thing is there was a report released last week about the kind of financial results of top 14 and the Pro D2 side. So for all the economic, and it was kind of like for all the economic wealth and the kind of prosperity or positive noise around the health of financials in France, there were only four sides in the top 14 and only four sides in Pro D2 that ended up with a positive operating profit. So 10 making an operating loss, which isn't good. And the combined overall loss at operating level was 64.5 million across the top 14, which is up 9.7% on last year. So that'll be like all the kind of match day costs and staff and ground and travel, and that's going to be pretty much anything. I feel like I need to have a dive into a set of as the kind of resident financial accountants
encounter
out of us two. I feel like I do need to dive into a set of accounts from someone and just see what the financials look like for these French sides. But one of the sides had a 16.9 million operating loss, which isn't that great. That's pretty poor. But the operating revenue, so I think there were 7 areas of operating revenue. I, again, would need to dive into some of the accounts to see what those are, but you'd imagine it's gate, sponsorship, prize money. That was all double-digit growth in 5 out of the 7 operating areas. So in terms of revenue, so it is just kind of they need to slash some costs, basically.
There have been quite a few presidents, haven't there, over the last season or two, talking about reducing the salary cap. I know Lorenzetti at Racing, which sort of seems a little bit ironic, but he's been pushing for it for quite a while.
16.9 million was the worst loss, and it's the same club as previous seasons, and they're getting funding from one of their shareholders. I don't know who that is. It didn't say in the report. Predator seen 41% growth in match receipts year on year, which is quite impressive. Despite saying that there are 4 teams in the black, as it were, I've somehow found a list of 5, which are Ube Bay, 1.3 million euro operating profit, La Rochelle, Toulouse, Bayonne, and with a measly 77.8 thousand operating profit, section Powers, and the rest are all negative. Toulon, pretty big, but they're not I think it's Stade, Racing, and Van were the big losers. I think, judging by this tweet or this post, I think it's Stade the ones that are in real financial struggle. Could be Racing, to be fair.
Yeah, very possibly. Elsewhere, a couple of little transfers being made. One of them, I don't know if it may have come out last week, so you may have already covered it, but Dave Cherry,
No, I didn't cover it, but yeah.
Scottish hooking fame, is off on a, I think, 3-year deal to Van, which is pretty cool. Joel Matavesi of, again, the Matavesi brothers, is moving from Bedford to Bourg-en-Bresse in Nationale, which is quite interesting. And then the other bits that caught my eye this weekend, Francisco Isaac put up a really good clip, which you may have seen in your highlights, of Ali Oz of Oyonnax. Maybe their season will turn around off the back of his ability to nail unbelievable 50-22s off the left boot. One of the more extraordinary 50-22s you will ever see. And the other thing, which was fairly heartwarming, feels like there's some good, well, maybe by the financials, and some slightly better vibes around Racing 92 at the moment. Getting a few wins, everyone's looking happy. Those retro shirts are coming out a bit more, which are rather lovely. And they were at a children's rehab clinic up in Paris, I think, last week. So some quite nice footage of Sarzeski and Gail Fiku playing a bit of rugby with
nice
kids, which is very, very nice indeed.
You mentioned Van there. I feel like we completely forgot to mention this after our trip, but Gus, who previously got a shout out for finding the sticker in the loo of Nabucodonosor in Toulouse, slightly humiliating shout out you gave him. He actually messaged us during that van trip with a decent anecdote for a bit of redemption for Gus. I was playing for a club called Montluçon in 2014, and we were playing Van at home. And on their way to the game, their bus caught fire. So this is 11 years ago? So they're in like Federal 2 or something at that point, or Federal 2. They all got out okay, but didn't manage to retrieve all the kit. So they had to play in our away kit, and half their players were wearing Kipster boots that they had to buy from Decathlon. We still lost. That's so thank you, Gus, for that anecdote. That's a very enjoyable one of Van coming through the leagues. Elsewhere, I saw a rumour of Rafael Costa Storti to Grenoble. That's quite a cool one. It'd be nice to see him get some game time. They've got some good wingers, but he's obviously great. The only other one is the interview with Will Collier in the Times that I think was one of the more enjoyable articles I've read recently. Will Kelleher's interview with Will Collier. Each day after training in southwest France, the lunch table groans. Players sit through 3 courses, often starting with tartare de boeuf, raw beef mince, that's an interesting translation, followed by magret de canard, roasted duck, and then riolet, a rice pudding. If it was in England, people would whack it all on one plate and just try and wolf it. Here, they make it this big deal of a long meal. The whole article was just enjoyable about just food and life in France. I was like, oh, God. That just sounds amazing. So if you haven't read it and you've got access to the Times, it's a great interview.
Very nice indeed. And the final one for me, I think we maybe mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. Our first ever guest on the pod back a year ago, Zach Farrance. He's had a horrible time of injuries.
He had over a full year out, over a full year out with injury.
Which is, so horrible. Made his first start for his new club, San Diego Legion. Is it San Diego? It is San Diego Legion.
Yeah, San Diego Legion. And he said he's going to try and, with that we're going to try and get him on the pod at some point.
Cool. On that note, I think we're at time. So you can follow us on all the usual channels at Rosbiff Rugby. Email us, rosbiffrugby@gmail.com. And enjoy the return of the top 14. Enjoy the Pro Day continuing to hot up. And we'll see you next week. Rob, have a fabulous trip to France. We'll look forward to hearing of your tales when we next catch up. But I've been Richard, that's been Rob. We've been the Rosbiff Rugby podcast. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.